Life sometimes shows its true face when you think you are left alone in the center of the stage. Those who sold you out, those who bargained behind your back, those who played games under the table, each of them tried to sell your fate cheaply for their own benefit. But there was something they didn't know: they don't hold the key to your destiny. None of that money, none of those secret deals, none of those dirty plans can prevent the divine path written on it. They took their money but never found peace. They plotted but never got the reward they were expecting. Today, while the whole world is counting the money they took, you are preparing to receive the reward for your sweat, patience, and faith. Don't just be a spectator, be a part of the story. With your support, we will become a giant family of 5,000 people. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and join us. Because the real prize is not in those who sell you out, but in those who survive. You have been chosen, and no one can cheapen your story anymore. Picture a tiny seed buried deep in the earth. To anyone watching from above, it looks like nothing is happening. There's just dirt, maybe some weeds, maybe the occasional footstep pressing it further down. But in the silence of that hidden place, a quiet miracle is underway. Roots are reaching, life is stirring, and destiny is being written in darkness long before a single green shoot breaks through to the sun. In the same way, chosen one, the fullness of your story has always been at work beneath the surface, unseen, but unstoppable. The battles you've faced, the betrayals, the harsh words, the plots that circled your name like vultures, these weren't the signs of your demise. They were the rich soil, the sacred cover, and the silent pressure that made your roots go deeper. Every plot against you became a fertilizer for your strength. Each hardship, each test, each scheme that aimed to write you off was unknowingly watering the seed of your purpose. It's no accident that those who wrote you off only set the stage for your rising. They didn't understand. What looks like burial is really planting. There are moments in life when it seems like everyone is reading from the same script, casting you in the role of the fallen. Yet, what they cannot see is that heaven holds the master copy, and the final scene has already been decided. The very efforts to close your chapter only made your testimony stronger. Those who conspired in boardrooms, whispered behind closed doors, and spread lies in the shadows thought they were working against you. But, chosen one, they were actually drafting the preface to your next breakthrough. Don't just read the stories, experience them. Subscribe and step inside. You were never fighting this battle by yourself. The invisible army assigned to your life was mobilized every time your name was spoken with malice. Every time a door was shut in your face, another was opening somewhere higher, just out of sight. The hand of Providence has a habit of flipping scripts when the world least expects it. What felt like the end was actually a divine reset, a holy plot twist written just for you. All the while, the real work was happening in places nobody could see. Quiet nights spent wrestling with doubt, secret tears, silent prayers. These are the things that make you unshakable when the spotlight finally finds you. Like the seed pushing against the weight of the earth, your spirit was being fortified for a season of unprecedented growth. Where others saw defeat, God saw the makings of a miracle. As time unfolded, every attempt to mark you with shame became the backdrop for your display of resilience. The traps they set for you only taught you how to fly higher, to soar above the chaos, untouched by the snares meant to hold you down. Those who wagered on your downfall didn't realize they were placing bets against a destiny guarded by the highest court of heaven. They thought the game was theirs, not knowing you were divinely backed from the beginning. It's a holy irony, isn't it? The architects of your opposition couldn't see that their own plans were flawed from the start. While they celebrated your struggles, seeds of their own undoing were taking root. Just like the Pharaoh who hardened his heart against Moses, or Goliath who underestimated David, your adversaries mistook your silence for surrender and your solitude for weakness. But you were never alone in the fight. God's presence was the shield they couldn't see and the answer they could never predict. Some battles are won not with noise but with quiet endurance. Every time you chose dignity over retaliation, faith over fear, hope over bitterness, you were writing a legacy that will outlast every rumor and outshine every attack. The Lord specializes in taking the stones thrown by the enemy and turning them into stepping stones for the faithful. What looked like a setback was really the start of your comeback. As seasons shift and the dust begins to settle, the world will witness what you and heaven have always known. What was written against you was only part of the preparation. The same eyes that watched for your failure will see you lifted in ways no one expected. Those who once orchestrated obstacles will find themselves spectators to your unfolding victory. The tables will turn, not by your own force, but by a grace that moves mountains. So don't despise the hidden years, the misunderstood moments, or the roads that led you through shadows. Those were the very places where your roots dug deep, where your faith grew unbreakable, and where your future was secured. The soil that tried to bury you has become the ground from which your harvest will spring. Let your story be living proof, especially to those walking through darkness today. God is faithful to complete what He starts. When the world tries to script your ending, remember, the author of life always has the final word. And if you're still in the shadows, still pressing through the dirt, know this: the miracle is already happening. Your breakthrough is already in motion. The day will come when those who watched your burial will be astonished by your blooming. And all of heaven will rejoice, not just because you survived, but because you thrived, chosen one, exactly as you were destined to do. Imagine the old river that winds its way through the heartland, sometimes barely more than a trickle, hidden beneath brush and stone, but always there, always moving. You can try to dam it up, you can pretend you control its bends and swells, but sooner or later, it will find a way, pushing aside everything in its path to reach the sea. That's how truth flows in this world, chosen one. It might move quiet and slow for a season, but it never stops. In God's timing, it sweeps through every valley, exposing what's buried and bringing fresh life to dry ground. Behind every backroom meeting, every scheme whispered in the shadows, there's always someone convinced they're steering the whole ship. They sit up high, secure in their fortress of privilege, certain the rules will never apply to them. Like a player moving chess pieces across a polished board, they plan moves ahead, imagining the endgame is already decided. Yet what they never see, what no amount of power can buy or shield against, is the subtle tide set in motion by their own plotting. The plans they devise in secret become the very invitation for a higher order to move. With every calculated step, they set off a chain of events invisible to the naked eye. A current of justice, guided by hands not their own, starts weaving through the cracks. It flows in places they'll never check, gathering every hidden word, every under-the-table deal, every unjust act. Just like the river that seems tame until a storm comes, that current waits for the right season, swelling in silence until the day it bursts forth. It's easy for the so-called powerful to believe they're above the consequences. They count their connections, their dollars, their titles, and sleep easy while the rest of the world worries. But God is never fooled by appearances. The currents of providence don't bow to the gates of the mighty. While the chess master leans back, sure of victory, the true master is already arranging the board in ways no human mind can predict. And so, chosen one, every time you feel outmatched or outmaneuvered by those sitting in high places, remember the river. Remember that even the deepest secrets can't stay hidden forever. The plans meant to trip you up only stir the waters that will, in time, reveal every hidden stone and every buried truth. Your role is not to panic or retaliate, but to keep standing, trusting that the flow of divine justice is at work, even when it looks slow, even when you can't see it. You are not forgotten by the one who counts every tear, who weighs every motive, who brings light into the places others try to keep in the dark. The storms that shake the river awake are the same storms that will make a path for your breakthrough. When the time is right, that current will carry everything that was plotted in silence straight into the sun. And what was meant to harm you will become the very proof that nothing escapes the flow of God's purpose. Hold your peace and stay rooted in faith. The chess masters of this world can only move pieces, but God moves the entire board. In His timing, what's been done in secret will be shouted from the rooftops. The river will rise, the stones will shift, and every injustice will be brought to the surface. When you trust the process, you can rest in the promise. The same river that exposes will also carry you forward, chosen one, right into the harvest that was always meant to be yours. Picture an old farmhouse roof in a summer storm. At first, only a few drops slip through, hardly worth noticing. But over time, the leak grows, steady and persistent, until the ceiling can't hold it back any longer. That's how spiritual consequences work in this world, chosen one. For a while, it might seem like all the slander and schemes are just words lost in the wind, like harm will simply blow away. But heaven's ledger keeps a perfect record, and not a single drop is missed. Every plot hatched against you, every whisper meant to limit your rise, doesn't just vanish into thin air. It builds up quietly, drop by drop, unseen behind the walls of everyday life. The world may not see it stacking up, but God does. There's an invisible balance sheet that measures not only actions but intentions, the bitterness, the envy, the schemes hatched behind closed doors. While those who orchestrate harm might walk tall for a season, confident the roof will hold, they forget that time and pressure are always at work. The dam behind their attacks keeps rising, fed by every rumor, every act of sabotage, every dark agreement meant to block your blessing. They may celebrate your temporary setbacks, thinking they've finally found a way to keep you contained, but spiritual laws don't operate on the world's timetable. There will always come a night when the sky opens up just enough, and that hidden reservoir can no longer be contained. That's when justice arrives, not as a flash of vengeance, but as the natural release of pressure that's been building for years. The one crack, the one moment nobody expected, and suddenly everything that was meant to break you begins to break the chains holding you back instead. The weight of all those negative investments comes crashing down, not on you, but on the system that set itself up against you. It might take time for the storm to do its work. You may wonder why the leaks are allowed at all, why those intent on harm seem to prosper for a while. But God is never late and never blind. The delays are often just more rain filling the reservoir, preparing for a breakthrough so complete that even those who never believed will have to stand back in awe. The lesson for you, chosen one, is to keep your eyes on the promise and your heart in the right place. Don't waste your days checking the ceiling for cracks or fretting about every rumor that floats your way. Instead, keep your spirit strong, your purpose clear, and your faith steady. When the appointed time arrives, when the first drip turns into a flood, you'll find that every ounce of harm meant for you has become the downpour that waters your next season. Just as the rain eventually finds its way through every weakness, so does justice find its way through every scheme. Stay patient, stay faithful, and remember, the dam will break not when your enemies expect it, but exactly when your destiny requires it. And in that moment, every hidden debt will be paid in full, with interest, as heaven releases the blessing that was stored up just for you. Imagine a tree that's weathered every season, its roots reaching so deep that even the fiercest storms only make it stronger. Most folks glance at the trunk or the branches, never stopping to wonder about the quiet strength underneath. That's what it's like to be chosen, to be carried by a story so much older and grander than anyone realizes. The ones sent to oppose you were given a carefully crafted narrative. They heard only what would keep their focus small, just enough to make them believe you stood alone, unprotected, fragile against the coming winds. But the truth is, long before you ever stepped onto the stage of this moment, a line of ancestors dug deep into the soil, laying foundations with every prayer, every hard lesson, every silent victory over adversity. They built a spiritual infrastructure beneath your feet, a hidden lattice of strength that can't be uprooted by shallow opinions or surface-level attacks. You see, while others looked at your surface, at what could be measured or counted, they missed what God had planted in the unseen. They didn't realize that the real source of your power didn't come from what people could see. It came from what was built when no one was watching. When life's storms came, when accusations and betrayals tried to knock you down, it wasn't just your own resolve keeping you upright. It was the legacy of those who'd gone before, the unseen hands holding you steady, the faith that had been prayed over your very bones. And it goes deeper still. The winds pushing you forward, the intuition that nudged you when logic said stop, the peace that flooded your soul when chaos was all around, that wasn't just coincidence. That was the breath of the Spirit moving on your behalf. When others plotted against you, thinking they were moving pieces on a chessboard, they never realized there was a wind at your back, a current stirred by heaven itself, making every setback a setup for something greater. So when people underestimate you, when they gather to strategize or whisper behind closed doors, Remember the truth about your foundation. You don't stand on the shaky ground of human approval or the shallow roots of fleeting favor. You're anchored in something eternal, in a story that began long before you arrived and will keep unfolding long after you've left this season behind. Stay rooted, chosen one. Let them talk, let them plan. The roots beneath you are deeper than any storm they can send, and the winds guiding you are answering to a call they'll never understand. God has already gone ahead of you, and every move against you only reveals how unshakable your foundation truly is. Picture a boomerang tossed into a field, set loose with force and certainty, meant to strike a target far away. But anyone who's watched a boomerang in flight knows, it's made to return to the sender. That's a spiritual law written into the fabric of the universe, and you, chosen one, are living proof that what is sent out will always circle back home. Can you spot the lesson in every legend? Subscribe and join the search. There are seasons when it feels like opposition is working overtime behind closed doors. Words are whispered, shadows are moved, and storms are conjured in places you may never even see. Plans are drawn up to keep you stumbling, to weigh you down with burdens and setbacks. But heaven is never taken by surprise. What's sown in secret always sprouts in the open, and every plot crafted in darkness is just a seed destined to break the surface in broad daylight. Now, the very troubles they released are beginning to swirl around their own feet. Nights once spent plotting your downfall are now sleepless with worry. The obstacles they built for you are the very same hurdles tripping them up on their own journeys. They invested their energy, their time, their resources into building walls and digging ditches, thinking you'd be trapped, but they're the ones hemmed in by the very traps they set. There's a kind of poetic justice at work that only God can orchestrate. It's not about vengeance, it's about balance. The world they tried to control, to bend and shape for their own gain, has become unmanageable in their hands. Like a garden overtaken by wild vines, every unchecked action, every secret curse, begins to grow beyond their control, turning their carefully cultivated plans into a harvest of confusion and loss. And in the midst of it all, while their storms gather and rage, you walk on, lifted, protected, guided by a peace that makes no sense to those on the outside looking in. You didn't have to answer every attack, fight every battle, or match every scheme. All you had to do was stay faithful, keep your eyes on the higher path, and trust that what's sent out always returns. So let the winds blow. Let them see what happens when you touch a life anchored in purpose and watched over by the divine. They're learning a lesson that can't be bought or sold, one written into every sunrise and every season. You cannot curse what God has blessed, and you cannot control what was never yours to hold. Think of a lighthouse standing strong on a rocky shore, its beams slicing through storm and darkness, not just for the ship that already knows its way home, but for every soul wandering near disaster. That's how divine protection works for the chosen ones. You might not always see the keepers of that light, but their presence is undeniable, ever watchful, ever steady, ever ready to guide and defend. Sometimes life heats up until it feels like every day is a trial by fire. Pressure mounts, opposition gathers, and it seems like you're walking into a furnace meant to incinerate your hope. But just when it looks like you're all out of options, help appears in ways that can't be explained by logic or luck. Loved ones call at the right moment, doors open where walls once stood, and subtle nudges warn the well-intentioned to step back before they get swept away by the consequences of someone else's choices. This isn't just luck, coincidence, or being in the right place at the right time. It's the invisible hand of providence, moving in silence but never in absence. Sometimes it's a wise word spoken at the exact right time, a friend's dream that brings sudden understanding, or a gut feeling that keeps you from taking the wrong path. Other times, it's ancestors and spiritual guardians standing guard when you're too weary to defend yourself, sending warnings, whispering wisdom, nudging the vulnerable away from harm and drawing you out of danger before the storm can break. Protection like this isn't earned, and it doesn't need an audience. It's the fruit of an unbreakable bond, woven deeper than blood, stronger than din, older than memory itself. You've been carried by prayers whispered before you were born and watched over by a love that never clocks out. In every crisis, there's been a rescue written into your story, a deliverance designed just for you. waiting on the other side of the boiling point. So, while the world may call it luck or fate, you know the truth deep in your spirit. You're covered by a promise that cannot be revoked, guarded by a presence that cannot be shaken, and lifted by a hope that shines brighter with every trial. When the tide turns, and it always does, the world will see that no scheme can outlast the protection wrapped around a chosen soul. This is the grace that outlasts the storm, the shield that turns enemies into witnesses, and the light that never, ever fades. Imagine a farmer sowing seeds in the ground, thinking the earth will forever conceal what's been buried. But come spring, every seed answers to the sun, what's hidden rises, and every action produces a visible harvest. That's how the digital age works for those walking in truth. No matter how carefully someone tries to cover their tracks, every click, every keystroke, every message is planted in a field that cannot be locked away forever. We live in times when the very tools built to construct walls of secrecy have become the unwitting scribes of destiny. The emails, the texts, the digital handshakes, each transaction, each quiet deal, each whispered scheme, is cataloged in a ledger that never forgets. People might imagine that encryption or deletion will buy them safety, that clever passwords or backdoors will make their shadows disappear. But what they don't see is that there's a higher court in session, and every byte of data is evidence waiting for its summons. There's a spiritual law at play here, as real as gravity and as patient as time. What's created in darkness is only waiting for the day when light calls it forth. Technology has become the silent watcher, a modern-day scroll unrolling at just the right hour. When the appointed season arrives, when the appointed hand unlocks the right file, or when the right person asks the right question, everything hidden is revealed without a single word of protest. For those chosen by purpose, this means justice doesn't have to shout. You don't need to fight in secret or scramble to prove your case. The truth already has its fingerprints on every hidden thing. When the day comes that the tables turn, the evidence will speak for itself, louder than any accusation, more precise than any defense. No wall of secrecy, no code of silence, no high tower of arrogance will stand against the power of revelation. The field is already sown, the harvest is inevitable. And so, while some invest in secrecy, the wise invest in integrity. Because in this season, when the world is shifting and old systems are failing, it's the honest record that becomes the shield, and it's the righteous that are finally vindicated, not by human hands, but by the unstoppable momentum of truth finding its way into the light. It's like the story of a single lantern lit in a room full of shadows. No matter how thick the darkness, one flame is enough to change everything. When a person's heart is stirred awake by truth, it's as if God himself gently turns a key inside them, and suddenly, what was once confusing becomes clear as day. That's the power of a spiritual wake-up call, one that can't be silenced or shaken loose. In every drama of life, there's usually at least one soul who feels the nudge from within, the kind that doesn't shout, but quietly persists, asking for honesty even when it's risky. For this person caught up in the plot, it began as a flicker, a discomfort that wouldn't go away no matter how they tried to ignore it. Maybe they saw too much, or heard a whisper they couldn't unhear. Maybe their dreams became uneasy, or their conscience began to itch at them during the quiet moments. However it started, the signal was clear. It was time to turn from the crowd and move in the direction of the truth. So, almost without meaning to, they start paying closer attention. They begin writing things down, names, dates, exchanges, assembling a record that could change everything. With every note, every documented detail, they're choosing courage over comfort. They're stepping out of the ranks of silence and into the role of a witness, someone who will not just let wrongs slip by unchallenged, but will make a way for restoration, even if it costs them comfort or convenience. For the chosen ones watching, let this be a reminder, even when things seem stacked against you, even when the crowd is silent or hostile, God always has a lamp burning somewhere in the story. He raises up unexpected allies, sometimes from the very circle that set itself against you. That lantern, that awakened soul, will help shine the light needed for justice to begin its work and for lost things to be restored. Sometimes, all it takes is one honest record and one willing heart to begin a chain reaction that sets everything right in the end. Picture a chessboard where God himself moves the pieces. Each friend, each helper, even the quiet observer, placed just where they need to be before the final checkmate. That's the beauty of divine timing. Sometimes, it's not the biggest move that wins the game, but the humble pawn stepping forward at the appointed moment. When it comes to spiritual destiny, the smallest gestures can trigger a tidal wave of change. There are seasons in life when it seems you're walking this road alone, but heaven's perspective shows a different picture. There are people whose hearts are stirred by dreams that won't let go, by a hunch they can't explain, or by a gentle urging to act, pray, or show up without knowing why. Some wake in the night with your name on their spirit, others find themselves nudged to make a call, to offer a word of encouragement, or to stand in the gap at just the right moment. It's never random. Each person is being positioned with precision. Sometimes these helpers don't even realize the impact of their actions. Maybe it's a word spoken in passing, a door held open, a prayer whispered in the dark, or a simple stand taken in a meeting. Each small act becomes a stone tossed into the water, sending ripples that reach farther than they'll ever see. Even when the world doesn't notice, even when no one applauds, their contribution is like oil poured on troubled waters, steadying the tides and tipping the scales toward breakthrough. In the journey of the chosen, vindication isn't always loud. Often, it arrives on the back of unseen support, through the faithfulness of those willing to follow a prompting, trust a vision, or respond to a call they don't fully understand. That's how God works, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary, weaving the fabric of deliverance through the willing hands and hearts of those who are in the right place, at the right time, for a purpose bigger than themselves. Imagine a blacksmith at his anvil, working a piece of metal in the roaring heat. Each strike, each spark only makes the steel stronger. That's how God forges his chosen, not in ease, but through the fire that proves what's been placed within can never be melted away. Just as gold is purified by flame, your character has been refined by trial after trial until it shines with an unbreakable glow. There's a sacred law written into the very blueprint of a chosen one's soul. It's like the roots of an ancient oak, gripping deeper every time a storm blows through. Others may see only the wind and the shaking branches, but those who have spiritual eyes know, the storm is actually feeding the tree, driving its foundation deeper, making it more unmovable with each passing test. You can't see roots from the surface, but without them, nothing stands when the hurricane comes. Endurance isn't just about gritting your teeth and waiting for the clouds to pass. It's about discovering over and over that there's something holy and immovable inside you. A spiritual DNA coded for survival, breakthrough, and victory. The greater the opposition, the stronger this core becomes, rising up like a river that refuses to dry up in drought. Each wave of adversity only uncovers new reserves of grit, faith, and courage you didn't know you had. Those who sent the trouble your way thought you would collapse. They didn't realize that the pressure wasn't crushing you, it was creating you. Every time the darkness closed in, a new wellspring of resilience flowed from places so deep it could only have come from the hand of the Creator himself. Like diamonds formed under extreme force, the beauty and strength emerging from your life are born out of those seasons when others thought you would shatter. The tide, once stirred up against you, finds itself reversing course. The same currents that were meant to sweep you under now carry you to higher ground. What was meant to break you ends up being the very force that lifts you. And when all is said and done, people will marvel, not at how you avoided the storm, but at how you stood taller because of it, roots deepened, faith proven, endurance shining like a beacon that says, God's hand never left me, not for a moment. It's like a mighty river, winding its way through stone and mountain. You'd think only an earthquake could shift such weight, but sometimes all it takes is a small pebble nudged into the current, a gentle touch in the right spot, and the whole course begins to change. That's how divine providence works in the lives of the chosen. One tiny act of obedience, one decision to step away from what drains your spirit, can reroute the entire flow of your destiny. Every now and then, the most powerful shifts don't look dramatic to the outside world. It might just be a quiet no spoken in prayer, or the simple courage to walk away from a relationship that no longer brings peace. The world won't see angels dispatched, but heaven's registry takes notice. What seems like a small detour to you is often the very moment God begins to tear down walls and break cycles that have stood for generations. These aren't random impulses, they're spiritual nudges, holy signals meant to reposition you exactly where favor and breakthrough can find you. Hungry for timeless wisdom? Hit subscribe and feed your soul. Those orchestrating your downfall are on the verge of being fully exposed. No layer of disguise or fortress of secrecy can withstand the wave of truth that is building. When the moment arrives, every hidden plan, every ally, every resource marshaled against you will be known. Retribution comes not by force, but by the law of cause and effect built into the very fabric of the universe. What was meant for your ruin has become the instrument of your restoration. Every hardship has a harvest, every tear a purpose. The shockwaves of your breakthrough are not local, they travel far, waking up others who have silently endured similar battles. With each revelation, the hold of darkness weakens, making way for new light to pour in. As these hidden connections are revealed, the old structures that protected harm and deception are crumbling. Bonds built on secrecy and manipulation are breaking apart, both in spirit and in reality. Justice is a current that doesn't tire. Those who stepped over the line will see consequences unfold in ways they never anticipated, while those who recognize their missteps and turn toward truth may find new beginnings beyond their regrets. Your story is proof that no one walks alone, even in the deepest valley. There is an order, an alignment, a support that shows up right on time, revealing that what was intended as a curse has become your blessing. In the end, victory isn't a solo accomplishment but a convergence of many unseen hands, divine patterns, and ancient promises. What was designed to be your downfall is now the foundation on which a greater purpose is being built. In that rising, you become a beacon, lighting the way for others to stand in their own power and truth, living evidence that destiny cannot be stolen, and light always finds a way.